Patrick, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Nick. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, really happy to have you. As we do always, would you mind giving a 411 of who you are and what brings you to the show today?
Yeah, I'll give you a 411 of a guy who used to live in the 412. I grew up in Western Pennsylvania, attended one of your local finer higher education institutions there at the University of Pittsburgh. I did that on a Navy scholarship because I was a poor kid from Erie, Pennsylvania, and I didn't have the money to go to college. So Uncle Sam helped me out, put me through flight school after college, and I spent 10 years flying jets in the Navy. And when I was done with that, I got into finance, and I've been running my own registered investment advisory firm for just over 5 years now. Got clients all over the country, mostly virtual. We were virtual before it was cool or necessary, especially over the last 18 months. And that's where I am today. Wrote a couple books. I love to be on podcasts, and I was excited to be on this one because A, I love pizza, and B, I love Pittsburgh.
Yeah, sounds great. We definitely, happy to represent Pittsburgh for sure. I think we really like to get into, the mindset of what it took for you to be successful. And I really, when I hear you talk about, the Navy, 10 years flying jets, I'm curious, has that really prepared you for life after service?
I think so. I mean, I think that there are some very well-known challenges to transitioning out of the military and into civilian life. It's a whole different lifestyle. It's a whole different vernacular. We talk differently. Everything's an acronym. It's just a very different way of life. However, I think that a lot of the skills you learn are transferable. So if you can kind of relearn the English language and reinsert yourself back into normal society, then you've got a leg up in certain areas. And one that jumps out at me, and it sounds dumb, but to an entrepreneur, it is the bread and butter of everything you do on a daily basis, and that's organization. We didn't go flying without a checklist because if you skipped a step, you could kill somebody, literally. I definitely took that with me, into civilian practice. I still use checklists to this day to guide not only my daily activities, but my activities with clients as well, because we don't want to miss something. We don't want to miss an opportunity to provide them with the planning that they need at just the right time.
Are you a pen and paper guy that your lists are kind of pen and paper, or do you use some apps or anything like that on your phone?
I'm all over the place. I switch back and forth, pen and paper, because I am kind of old school. But I do like there's a couple apps. I'm going to bring one up right now. Hopefully it doesn't mess me up.
I find myself using Notes a lot, just right on the iPhone. And then
Evernote's the one I just brought up.
Evernote.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a good one too. And you find that even in just your everyday life, like you think of something, idea pops in your head, you kind of just put it on paper so it's out of your head and onto paper.
Yep, absolutely. But like you said, you got to use the technology for what it's intended for, and it's intended to make you more productive. So yeah, if I have an idea and I don't have a piece of paper, jump into Notes, jump into Evernote on my phone and start jotting stuff down. Do that quite frequently.
So what was easier, flying fighter jets or trying to figure out the financial situation, trying to time the market?
Flying airplanes, because those laws are well established.
Right.
We know what's going to happen, and we know that gravity is the ultimate arbiter of everything we do. It's not quite as easy when you're looking at financial markets.
Right, and you really get into the history of financial markets too, right? Wouldn't you say that that's maybe where you kind of differentiate yourself from others in the financial world?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard people have called it my shtick. I like history. I was a history major at Pitt. I've continued to, go to lectures and read as much as I can about history. But really what I did in that book was try to tell people stories to get them to let their guard down, and then we could talk about finance, right? So I tried to use some historical pieces, some set pieces, and kind of give them a different look at characters they may or may not already know, and then work that back into a financial concept. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I think that it's really important, especially in today's day and age where we have this, crazy, insane amount of information coming at people on a daily basis, to have them step back, to have them think, to teach them how to think properly, because we just don't do it very much anymore.
In the finance world, or was this something that you knew that that's what you wanted to get into, or did you have a job in it before you had your own business? Like, what was that process like?
I got into finance because I screwed it up royally. As a junior lieutenant in the Navy, you're fairly well paid. You go on, 6-month deployments, and you don't spend a whole lot of money. And then you come back and you put it into high flying tech stocks, and it's 1999 and it doesn't go very well. So, I got into this because I made all the mistakes, and I made all the classic mistakes. I was greedy. I thought I was smarter than everybody else. And I realized pretty quickly that I wasn't, and that if I was going to get good at this, that if I was going to be a decent investor and somebody with a decent financial plan, I needed to educate myself. And I started doing that while I was still in the Navy. And then I found out somebody would actually pay me to do that when I got out. And that was fortuitous. That was not really a planned thing, but it's worked out well.
In having your own business, has there been ups and downs with getting started and getting clients, and how do you keep going every day?
Obviously, yes, that you hit the nail on the head. It's always a challenge. I think any business owner will tell you that the only easy day was yesterday. Obviously, stealing that one from the Navy SEALs, but I keep myself going by just trying to be a little bit better at something every day. It doesn't necessarily need to be on the business front. It could be, I love to play tennis. If I play a little bit better than I did yesterday, that's a good day for me. If I, reach a client and we have a conversation that opens up some avenues that we've never opened before, that's a good day for me. So I think it's just taking the little wins when they come, and realizing that that's how you make a difference, right? You make a difference one client at a time, one phone call at a time.
And that's kind of been your look and outlook on your business, is just trying to be a little bit better than you were the day before, and trying to gain more clients than you had the day before.
Yeah, I like to. I like to tell folks that, client acquisition is great, right? But in too many industries, and mine is one of them, it becomes the holy grail, the only thing people talk about, all they want to do. They just want to talk about their client acquisition numbers. Well, that's great, but you got to take care of the people that you're working with too. And there has to be some time, and it should be a significant amount of time for that. And one of the things I realized pretty early on with my practice is I needed to right size. I needed to be a certain size at a maximum, or I would start losing the ability to take care of those people the way I wanted to. So, yeah, I think that client acquisition and growth are super important. That's what's going to keep the lights on at the end of the day. But you can't forget about the people who got you there either.
So, from your transition from the military into civilian life, was there kind of a tipping point for you that was it easy, or was there just a point where you're like, you know what, I have to keep going? Like, you mind talking about that transition?
Yeah, I very vividly remember this. It's one of those stories where you probably won't believe it's true when it comes out of my mouth, but when I started my first job, I was working in the financial district in San Francisco, and my manager, the manager of the entire branch, who I'd never spoken to, called me up one day, a couple months in, and said, "Hey, can you come on up to my office? I just want to chat with you for a few minutes." I said, "Yeah, sure." So I go up, I sit down. He says, "Hey, tell me a little bit about your background. I hear that you flew the F-14. I think that's kind of cool. Let me know, what was that like?" And I kind of go through it and talk a little bit about it. He says, "Well, that's really great. It's really great to have you here. By the way, would you mind emptying my trash on your way out?" So very much, one of these power plays, right, that you hear about with the big boss letting you know, "Hey, you're in my world now. It's very, very nice that you were flying airplanes 6 months ago, but now you work for me." And I took a couple things from that experience. One, I knew that I wasn't in a place where I could succeed long term. I knew that I had to keep working to get to the next level and find, the next place that would allow me to be more client centric, to be less of an idiot than some of the folks in that office were. And I also realized that he was right. What you did previously is great, but it's time to hit the reset button and get to work. And it's like any other lesson. There were good parts and bad parts about that, but yeah, I remember that very distinctly.
And then from there, you realize, like, if you're going to do this, you need to do it for yourself. And is that kind of why you branched out to open your own thing?
Yeah, there was the freedom aspect of it. I didn't want to be one of these guys who's 65 and, still working for somebody else and putting in 70 hours a week and destroying his home life. And, I saw way too much of that in the brief times I spent working at some of the large, Wall Street firms. I knew I wanted to have a business that was built around my family, not on top of it. And I knew that I wanted to have a business that was super client centric. I wanted them to have my cell phone number. I wanted them to have access to me no matter where I'm at in the world, because I do like to travel. But that was what I signed up for. I wanted to have the flexibility, but also know that, there's not a whole lot of off days if the phone rings.
So what steps do you take to build a business around your family and not on top of them?
I think right sizing, like I said before, was one of the big keys for me, but also just being very cognizant and very present with what were the most important things in my life. What were the things that would mean true success to me, and what was ancillary, right? What could go away and what needed to stay. And it's interesting. One of the things, we'll go back and talk about this again. One of the things that I put away, at least temporarily, was client acquisition. I wanted to do some things a little bit differently. And what I did, instead of looking at individual client acquisition, was looking at buying out other advisors and potentially taking my brand to a different level without having to do all the work that it takes to bring on 30, 40, 50 individual clients at an individual level. So all of those were very, thought out strategies and tactics. And so far, so good. It just happens to be a time in our country where you've got a lot of advisors who are looking to retire and get out of the business. And now's as good a time as any to be an acquirer.
And when you go through that process, is that something where it's as simple as picking up the phone and calling the person whose firm it is, or is it you have to use brokers, or how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, it could be that simple. It wasn't for me.
Okay.
No, I've used some brokers. I've beat the bushes. I've never cold called another advisor. The irony would just be amazing. But no, it's very structured. It's a lot like internet dating. Everybody looks good on the screen, but you got to be really careful, and you got to do a lot of due diligence. And at the end of the day, you got to be very comfortable with who you're doing business with. I mean, it's no different than anything else.
Now, some of those deals, do they stay on to make sure that you keep that all their clients, and then after so many months or years, they can kind of go into the sunset? And or is it where you're, do you structure that you get paid on how many stay, like something like that? How does that kind of work?
What I quickly found out is it is the Wild West.
Mm.
It is, any model you can think of, and some you probably can't and shouldn't, are being done out there at the acquisition level. The ideal is to have somebody to stick around for as long as they will, because clients want and typically deserve that. If there's somebody that got them 15 years into retirement, and now that person is looking at doing something else and wants to ship you over to this guy that you've never met and never talked to, that's an uncomfortable conversation, and rightfully so. So yeah, I think that that's the ideal. The ideal is not always out there, but when you're in a position of success and you're coming at it from a position of success, and you don't have to do every deal that comes down the road, it's good to be picky.
I think that's good advice, because I think sometimes in the beginning, you don't have the choices, right? You have this one opportunity, and it's either take it or leave it. It may not be the best one, but it's the only opportunity. Right?
I've lost several deals that, a couple months afterwards, my wife and I just looked at each other and went, whew.
Yeah.
Very happy that didn't actually go through, because for whatever reason. So yeah, you got to be picky. And I think even if you're struggling, or you're new, or you haven't quite reached that success threshold you want, you still have to be picky, because the downside is so tremendous if you get it wrong.
And when you're going through that process, and you're right before the deal goes through, do you get some butterflies in your stomach? Do you feel a little nervous about, putting all your chips back in?
Yes, is the short answer. And I'm just thinking of a story now, going back to Vietnam, where they would put heart rate monitors on pilots going out and doing combat missions, and then coming back to the boat. And their heart rates were higher landing on the boat than they were in combat. Well, I'll bet you mine was higher signing those documents than it ever was coming back aboard the boat at night.
Yeah, I find that interesting. I know every time that we grow our big business, we do very similar things. We buy existing businesses. It's like like you said, was before the ink is dry, man. That's I always feel like if I don't feel like that way, then something's probably wrong. I'm probably a little bit more too much ego, or too much confidence. But I do my due diligence and then feel good about the deal. But it doesn't matter. The more documents you sign, the more you wonder what. I hope this works.
I know. It's a really good point. You should feel nervous about it. If not, you're not human, or you're doing something wrong.
And how about COVID? Everything that's happened the last pandemic, the last year and a half now, are you looking at this as an opportunity to grow? Are you looking at this as just an opportunity to stay afloat as a business owner? Or are you thinking long term that, hey, maybe this is a time to be moving in a direction of growth?
Interestingly enough, it's been a period of growth for us, and I'm looking to make sure that continues. I think the one thing that has helped my business model is that people have become a lot more comfortable with virtual work, and I've always been virtual. I haven't had an office in the last 5 years, so as long as that continues and people are comfortable with, phone calls and Zoom calls, That's going to be a positive for me. It has already, and it should continue that way. That said, I am looking forward to getting on an airplane and going out to see people and having dinner and talking about their finances again, because it's been way too long.
And that's where you said you can go all over the country, and
Mhm.
it's nice being able to do virtual because you have the virtual meetings. But I think there is something that's getting lost a little bit with all the virtual events that you're right. Like um, the convenience is so much easier, right, to be able to have a Zoom call. But when you do actually sit down and have a dinner conversation, and it really doesn't have to be even if you're meeting somebody, an advisor or a salesperson, it just feels good to be in person again and kind of almost rekindle that relationship. I think.
Yeah, again, I think I'm kind of old school in that regard. I like sitting down with people. I like, breaking bread and talking through things in that atmosphere, because it helps to break down some of the barriers to communication, I think. Um, Zoom is great, but it's very business like. When I get on a Zoom call with clients, it feels like a business meeting. Whereas when I'm sitting at their kitchen table and we're talking through things, that's a different vibe, and it's a different vibe at a restaurant or a coffee shop. So yeah, I miss that, and I think that's how real business ultimately gets done. In the meantime, you strike while the iron's hot.
I don't think we can have a financial guy on the show and not ask about approaches or the markets or anything like that. So I'm assuming that the approach, for everybody is different, right? Like you can't just say, hey, this is the way that you invest.
Mm-hmm.
You have to understand someone's goals, needs, wants, where they are in their life, and it's so personal, really.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And is that a lot of what you do also is you really try to get to know the person before you try to give them a plan of what's going to work?
It is, and I've tried a variety of different ways to do that in my career. It can be difficult because, at least initially in a relationship, a lot of folks are just very wary, and I get it. The financial community in Wall Street has not done a great job in our generation of building trust. I think we can say that without ruffling too many feathers. And that makes it hard sometimes to really get people to be vulnerable. And honestly, a good financial planning and financial investment conversation requires a little bit of vulnerability, because you have to admit that you've made mistakes. I mean, you heard me talk about, the dumbest thing I've ever done with investments. It's okay. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to show your vulnerability, but we are just so hardwired as people and investors to blow by that and ignore it and say, no, hey, I'm good. I never made any mistakes. And I just don't think you can get to where you really need to as a financial planner and as an investor in that way. So yeah, I've tried to do that. I do some surveys with people. I do some interactive things on phone calls, just to try to get, and by the way, some checklists, of course, just to try to get that little piece of information that can kind of start to unroll the ball of yarn.
Are you seeing individual investors becoming more educated, that they understand that if someone says, like when they call you and they say, well, what do you currently have now? And if they say, well, I have a 401k, can they really explain what's in their 401k, what mutual funds they have, or what maybe different index funds they have, or are they kind of just, well, I have a 401k and that's really where it starts and ends? Or are you seeing that there's educated investors out there?
What I would say is, I think investors are more informed than ever. but probably not as educated. And by that, I mean, they're getting a lot of information, right? It's not hard to get financial, I'm going to air quote, news. It's not hard to get that from television, internet, social media. But I also think that those three sources are kind of the three horsemen of the apocalypse when it comes to misinformation, right? Because you can get a bad idea around the globe in less than a second, and it doesn't take long for that to go viral. Pardon the use of that term. So yeah, I think that investors are coming to the table knowing a lot, but not necessarily being able to apply it or parse it out in a way that is useful. Does that make sense?
It does, and it kind of rolls me into thinking, like, when you say they're informed, you've got clients that are on plans that you're working towards the goals that they laid out from the beginning. How do you deal with somebody that calls up when they're informed and says, I want GameStop?
Carefully, number one. But, I think that what investors need is to understand the difference between investing and speculation. That's number one, right?
Like that.
And there's a place for speculation. I'm not poo-pooing, anything. There's a place in a portfolio for most things. We'll put it that way. The question is how much. I've got to raise my hand and say, what are you doing when I see, retirees with portfolios that really should be fairly non-volatile, and they're putting 20, 30, 40% into stuff like GameStop or cryptocurrency or whatever it is. Again, I'm not saying one way or the other that those are good or bad investments. But I think you have to be careful when you get into that level of speculation.
Yeah, I think you're right. Definitely the older you get, the risk should decrease. It's not like you should be 70 buying weed stocks. And right? Is that kind of, unless you're,
but even that depends. That depends, right? Because you could be 70 and have enough money that you are trying to pass money on to your heirs.
Yeah.
Well, now we're not investing for a 70-year-old, we're investing for 50 and 25-year-old.
Yeah.
And that's different. That is a different way to go about it. And you got to be, very careful that you do understand what the true life expectancy of those funds are.
Right. And I think that's what's interesting. The more that I understand everything, it's like I said, it's personal. It really is a personal thing when you're investing, because there's so many different avenues, not just the markets, but when you start being informed about cryptocurrency and then, real estate's a whole nother world, but there's many different investments out there. And, you see a lot of you see them everywhere. You don't even realize, you could be on Facebook and, you see 4 posts from a friend, and then that 5th one's an ad. And sometimes you get to see local ones that are some of these groups where they take a business and they try to fund the business through, like, crowdfunding has been a really big thing too. So do you suggest people get into crowdfunding, or is that another, if they have that extra income and speculative income, is that where you would put that?
I think that if they were interested in something like that, and the financial plan had been done and said, yeah, here's your cash flow here, and by the way, you're super passionate about doing this type of investing, again, knowing that it's speculative. Because to me, at that level, at crowdfunding, it's more about, I want to see this succeed because I like these people, or something like that. It's not usually a great business case, right? Because it's very hard in that realm, I think, to see a business plan like that. but yeah, if that's something you're super passionate about and you want to be, an angel investor at a smaller level, yeah, but let's make sure it's part of the overall plan, and that if that money goes away, your lifestyle is not going to suffer.
Yeah, I think that's all relative to the individual situation for sure. What's when you were talking earlier about like the actual overall success and really what it means to be successful.
Mhm.
What's your end goal? What's success mean to you?
Um, Success to me really boils down to, I would say, two things. And that's to have a quality family life, and try to do some good while I'm here. Now, that is obviously very broad, the second part. But what I really mean there is I do enjoy helping, as corny as it sounds. I do enjoy helping people. And there is no better part of my day than when the client says, "Hey, I couldn't have done this without you," or "I never would have thought of that. Thank you for saving me money on, on my taxes," or whatever it is. That's cool. That's the fun part for me. The other part of it is, and we kind of started to touch on it. There are people out there that I work with that it's not just their money for themselves, but they're also investing money, for causes, right? So I'm a chartered advisor in philanthropy as well. And to me, I don't have all the money in the world, but I've got a specialty where I can help people take the money that they have and want to use for a good cause, and I can multiply that. I've got a multiplier effect on that. So to me, that's kind of what I mean um, by doing some good while we're here. Not just at the client level, but at that multiplier level where we're helping clients, fund charities and philanthropic endeavors. And, again, if you can be better at something every day, well, let's be a little bit better at being human beings on a daily basis.
Yeah, I think it's always interesting when you get into really what defines success, and you mentioned family, and that's always important. And I like what you said about leaving a mark and trying to be better every day, and really just to do good. And I think, like I said, it's broad, but if you actually start applying methods to it, you can start to really see some impact.
That's right. And it's all about, having that vision, call it a vision statement if you must, but then breaking it down and saying, well, I mean, that's great, but how? How are you going to do that? And I've gone through that process. I've sat with a business coach and gone through that type of work to say, well, what does that really mean? How are you going to know if you're successful? And if I could put a plug in for that business coaching, I certainly would, because I've used several, from my startup phase and through today. And it's all been very helpful. It's nice to have people who are willing to, of course, for a fee, but sit down and kind of tell you what you're missing. Because there was a lot I was missing. I'm very good at some things, but I'm not very good at all the things. And being a practitioner and a business owner at the same time, that has been very valuable, is getting that coaching.
Yeah, I think the coaching's always one of those things that people wonder, like, oh, do I really need a business coach? And who is this business coach?
Mm-hmm.
But then you look at very successful athletes or Olympic athletes, and they have coaches. And then look at, you want to throw out guys like Tom Brady, who has personal assistants and personal coaches,
Sure.
and strength coaches, and um, dietary coaches, and just when you really look at somebody like him that's still mid 40s and successful in such a sport like football and in the NFL, it's why not in business do people think that they actually need mentors and business coaches? They just kind of think that they can do it all on themselves.
I mean, you either pay the business coach or you pay the therapist. That's that's kind of the way I looked at it.
Yeah, I think you're right. Patrick, we appreciate having you on the show today. Where can people get more of you if they want to get more of you?
Yeah, Nick, they can go to www.victoryindependentplanning.com. They can also take a look at historylessonsforthemoderninvestor.com. That's the website that supports my book. And those are the best ways. And as always, they can email me, patrick@victoryindependentplanning.com.
I think one question I want to ask you is, when you look at the market specifically right now, and, we went through, I would say a rough change of power at the top. And this was last year was the presidential election, and we had the change. And it seems like the market maybe took a step back for a little bit, but not really. It's still kind of, trending in a good way. And some of the stars of the market, your Amazons, Apples, Microsofts. I mean, they're doing really well, and Google, and when you look at that, so like, did it make that much of a difference? The switch in the presidential election, and even the switch of the power, and
at the risk of overstepping my bounds and almost making a political comment, no, I don't think it did. And I'm surprised that people thought it would. I mean, there's always going to be problems. There are always going to be issues. You can change the name and the face, but it doesn't make the world, bow to our whims automatically. So yeah, it's been a good year. I mean, let's not miss that fact. Most of that goodness has kind of been front loaded in the first couple months. It's been relatively, stagnant back and forth. That's normal. I mean, markets are looking for direction, right? And if they don't know what direction to go, they'll just go sideways. They'll drift. And I think that, we may have been on the verge of a breakout in the early spring. Unfortunately, the Delta variant kind of put us into a holding pattern. If the trends continue where Delta starts to peter out, that would be a good thing, obviously. I'm sure we'll find something else to worry about after that. That's the nature of markets. The old adage is that they climb the wall of worry. That's fine, as long as it's not something that is going to drastically alter the supply and demand equation across the global economy. And that is why COVID was such a fear for the market. That was why we were down, 33% in 5 weeks in domestic markets. And that's why we recovered so quickly as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to point that out because I think that timing the market is probably one of the biggest things that's where you can lose the most, is when you say, okay, there was a new president, I'm going to pull everything out now. And
yep.
And boy, you ruin those returns. Or even with COVID, really, if you were pulling out because you were worried that it was down, I mean, it bounced back really quick. Like, there was a point in those 5 weeks where it was overnight stuff would just came back. And I don't know how you time that. So
there's an economist that I've seen in person, and I've stole this comment from him and used it over the years a lot during the last 4 or 5. But the comment is this: loving or hating the government is not an investment strategy. So I don't care what your politics are. We got to look at this from a higher level view, and we can't get sidetracked with how we want things to be.
I like it. So, Patrick, now it's time to solve the equation to your success. We're going to have to ask you 7 rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Okay. Best seminar or teaching you've ever been to?
Can I say my undergraduate degree?
Sure.
Yeah, University of Pittsburgh.
Favorite item you've bought recently under $100?
A massage gun.
Name an idol or hero of yours that you've met in person.
David McCullough, who's a historian.
Favorite book to give as a gift.
12 Habits for Life.
Something you do every morning.
I wake up and stretch.
Your personal mantra or favorite quote.
My personal mantra is don't be an idiot.
And place you go to decompress and reset.
I go to the south of France.
Patrick, thank you so much for being a guest on the Business Equation today. We appreciated it. And I thought you were going to say right outside your door there on the beautiful beach, but
that works
like
too.
That. Yeah. Okay. Very nice. Thank you, Patrick. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Nick.